What's up, fucker? It's your boy Jack Slack, Fights Gone By podcast, episode 213. And it's going to be a bit of a strange one today. If the sound's off, I'm sorry. I've been inside for the last, 3 months now? And at the start of lockdown, the missus decided that, what I would call my office, but what is apparently our office, was going to be more important for her actual job than for my sort of job where every other day is spent just shitposting. And I tried to argue my case. I said, babe, if the global economy tanks, Fight Island is what's going to save us. Fight Island and my gig. It's going to pay the mortgage. So yeah, I'm now, I've done a variety of different recording locations. I'm trying them all out. It's getting a bit complicated and annoying. I've ordered a ton of new stuff to try and make it a bit easier to record. However, pubs are going back July 4th. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can send the wife back into work and she can risk COVID and I'll go back to recording my podcast normally. But right now, I'm sitting on the couch next to a pile of cushions with the microphone hidden inside. Just casually talking to a pile of cushions. So that's why it probably sounds a bit weird. But I promised a podcast today. So I'm going to deliver a podcast today, even if it's a short, muffled one. I think we'll do a bit of catching up on news, and then we'll do the preview of Hooker versus Poirier, and then I'll talk about what I liked and didn't like from that Blades Volkov card, because it's been a little while since we caught up. If you missed it on Monday, on Friday, I wrote a big piece on Shane Burgos for the Patreon boys, which you can read at the Fight Primer, and then on Monday I wrote a recap of the fight itself between Burgos and Emmitt, because it was such a fantastic fight. And then yesterday I released the Filthy Casuals Guide to Dustin Poirier 3.0, which is very different to the previous two and well worth your time. So that's where I've been. I've not been not working, I've just been doing different stuff. So in terms of news, I think not an awful lot interesting happening. Vicente Luque versus Randy Brown was signed, which is a weird one because Randy Brown got knocked out by Nico Price, who Vicente Luque has now beaten twice, so he earned the shot at the guy that most recently lost to Nico Price. But, that welterweight division, they can't really decide what they're doing, so they're just keeping the top 4 or 5 guys out of action, and everyone else can just kill each other over and over. Then there was a bit of a weird situation with Rizin, where Tafik Musayev, who, if you haven't seen him before, he's really good. He's the one who, Bellator entered the worst pitbull in the Rizin Grand Prix in an attempt to big him up. So he got, Saki Kabara played into that. He gave him Tatsuya Kawajiri in the first round, and Tatsuya Kawajiri is beyond washed. So Pitbull knocked him out with a knee to the head. Easy highlight reel knockout. Very manipulative, exploitative stuff. But then in the final, Pitbull met Tafik Musayev, and Musayev was just running circles around him. He had this weird, loopy, banging sort of striking, and then he was picking up single legs, getting full high single leg position and sweeping Pitbull's other leg out from under him. It was a really nice performance. Very impressive. From a guy who was kind of under the radar, because Patricky Pitbull, the worst one, is still one of Bellator's top guys, and they're desperate to push him. I think he's got a Gian Vellante situation where he's not particularly good, but he hangs around a lot with someone who is, and you want to keep them on side. But anyway, Tafik Musayev has been making noise about going to the UFC or Bellator or ONE for a while, and then it came out that he was making noise again this week, and it came out that Rizin hadn't paid him, and then another fighter from the Rizin Grand Prix was like, oh, well, you get paid when your drug test comes back clean, which is the most bollocks sounding thing I've ever heard, because firstly, Japan doesn't give a shit about drug tests. When was the last time you heard a fighter fail a drug test in Rizin or Pride? I mean, Pride, when they came to America, they had to test, but that was about it. That was athletic commissions, and the company itself didn't give a shit. But then very quickly, it all just blew over. Tafik Musayev was like, that didn't happen, I didn't say that. I'm very happy at Rizin, and they have paid me. So that was weird. However, Rizin is very much in his death throes at this point. I said that a little while ago when they were putting out the garbage cards and with no names on at all. And Saki Kabara just said the other day that they're just waiting to die, which is kind of sad because if you're Saki Kabara And firstly, you've made the promise that the mob aren't going to be involved this time. There's your first mistake. It's like the UFC with USADA. Don't promise to be squeaky clean when it doesn't help you to be squeaky clean. But yeah, no mob help from now on. And Chatri is in similar situation, well, worse situations, burying $120 million of debt and just being like, oh, I got $1 billion of new loans. I got 10 figures in the bank, mate. Trey Commerce. So yeah, that's got to hurt if you're Saki Kabara. Your peer can just scam more Singaporean fail sons when he's in trouble. And then, I'm just going to touch on this so I can put it on the thumbnail, but there was Analyst Gate, which was Robin Black and Luke Thomas falling out over the Max Roskopf corner stoppage. Might as well talk about that here, actually. Max Roskopf, grappling phenom, fighting Austin Hubbard, and basically hit a wall in round 2 and decided that he wasn't going to win and that he wanted out. And Robert Drysdale, who is sort of a jiu-jitsu legend. He did a couple of really important things in jiu-jitsu, but he was never like, Marcelo Garcia level. Basically, his big win is a submission win over Marcelo Garcia in the finals of the Absolute ADCC, ignoring the fact that there were a lot of guys missing that year and that he outweighed Marcelo by something like 80, 90 pounds. However, he's a very smart guy, very good jiu-jitsu, very clever grappler, did a lot of cool Darth stuff. His passing game at that ADCC was awesome. He just murked Andre Galvao. And then he went to MMA promptly afterwards. Problem was, he got into the UFC. He had one fight on a Ultimate Fighter finale card and failed more drug tests than he had fights. So we never got to see him again. And I said I'm sad I never get to see him make a splash in the UFC, but luckily he came back and did make a splash by doing this. But really, there's a lot of opinions on this. My personal opinion is that if you have to, there is going to be a degree of overcoming adversity in being a great fighter, and you have to learn to do that by facing adversity. But equally, for all the people I laugh about sending me emails being like, look out for me, I'm the next Conor McGregor, you need a sense of delusion or, a delusional self-belief to be a fighter. But if you take the full minute between rounds to convince your guy into believing that he can win, and he's still not sold on that when he leaves the corner, he probably doesn't have the focus he needs on the fight to win the fight. If you're focused on what the guy believes to begin with, then there's not an awful lot you can do in that corner to help him. Drysdale wasn't able to give him any help because the whole minute in the corner was an argument between the two of them, with him trying to get Roskopf to continue. Now, the obvious thing is that Roskopf wasn't going to die. He wasn't getting viciously beaten, but if he was gassed out and he knew he didn't have any more, sending him out for 5 minutes of just getting beaten up, because that was what was starting to happen at the end of the second round. Is he going to get anything more from that than saying, quitting and starting again another day? And this is, I saw some fucking appalling opinions about being a quitter bitch and quitting on the stool, but it's far more valuable for the guy to go home and say, he's already realised the mistake he's made. The mistake he made was not coming in condition. He doesn't need to be viciously beaten to realise that. He already knew what he'd done wrong. You can say, fuck it, okay, we'll try another day. And you've got that, then he'll have the chip on his shoulder, he'll have something to prove to himself and to the viewing public. I honestly don't think it hurts to take him out. However, there were branching schools of thought on this, and Luke Thomas was like, just disgraceful what Robert Drysdale did there, arguing with his man and trying to get him to continue. And then Robin Black released a video about the amygdala, Lovecraft stuff. But it basically culminated in this row over what it takes to be an analyst. Do you have to have fought professionally? If you haven't fought professionally, are you a white belt level analyst? Which is what Robin said. Robin's since apologised for this. I just wanted to touch on it because, whenever someone calls me an analyst, I don't call myself an analyst. I just consider talking about fights. If you know about fighting and you have a background in fighting, that's good. But I think that when you start calling yourself an analyst and start going like, so-and-so's analysis is blah, and I follow much superior analysts to them, you start disappearing up your own asshole and just getting high on the smell of your own farts. I don't think you should, there are plenty of people who I train with who can't tell you anything interesting about fights. And then there are plenty of people who don't train, but I'll sit down and have a drink with them, and they'll have a far more interesting take, and often more thoughtful and constructive take on upcoming fights or fights that have just happened than many of the people that I train with every day. So, it's gatekeeping that is just the daftest shit. And, you can get into you don't have to be a racehorse to train horses or whatever. But in this sport, most of all, where you're taking head trauma to do it at the high level, I personally think that it's daft to start pulling rank on people. I mean, the two of them have since made up, and I think everything's okay again, but I just wanted to say that because, don't let people put you off making something or writing something or making a video or doing a podcast or whatever because you don't have, X fights in the UFC or X fights at the lower levels or a regional title. If you like watching fights and you have not even good takes, if you have interesting takes, share them, learn from other people. And if watching fights and breaking down fights makes you want to train, brilliant, get more people in the gym, more bodies. And frankly, with the last 3-4 months and how they've been, if you cardio kickbox at home, you're doing the same thing as a lot of people who've been professional fighters at the moment. There's not a lot of gyms open and not a lot of sparring partners available. So let's talk about these upcoming fights this weekend. Just having a quick look over the recording to see how it's looking based on this pillar. My wife told me Fern Cotton's doing her podcast from under a duvet. And I went, oh, okay. And then just as she was walking out, I was like, hold on. Fern Cotton's married to Ron Wood's son. The idea that she doesn't have access to a full studio is fucking laughable. So, Hooker versus Poirier. Again, watch the Dustin Poirier Filthy Casuals guide. And I think a lot of this is going to be to do with how boxing exposes you to low kicks and the difficulty that Dustin Poirier has with low kicks. I say it quite often, but to really use the elements of scientific boxing, like the jab, or to set yourself up in position to shoulder roll and counter or slip or anything like that, you need one foot out in front of the other, and fairly committedly. And that just leaves that leg out there on a platter. Dudes don't fight like BJ Penn because people realise that getting kicked in the leg sucks. But then, you got more people moving towards more boxing nowadays because they're getting a better understanding of it. The jab is becoming a more useful weapon in MMA. I mean, it was always useful, but now guys who can wrestle and do all the other things are adding the jab and making the difference. But the low kick is such an issue because it comes in at the calf or just below the knee, and that mainly works because that lead leg is parked out there. Typically, Muay Thai or something like that, where guys are light on the lead leg more often, or in shorter stances, ready to whip that leg back into their stance and counter. Calf kicks not really an issue. I mean, only as much an issue as any other strike. But in MMA, they're just like the scourge at the moment. And Jim Miller gave Dustin Poirier a horrible time by kicking his lead leg, and he came up with that in the third round and had Dustin falling all over himself, and Dustin shot a takedown. I was going back through fights and being like, oh yeah, actually Anthony Pettis would have tried to kick his legs, and then I watched the fight, and of course that fight is Dustin moving him to the fence and immediately dropping on the hips and doesn't let him do any striking at all, basically. And that's where Dan Hooker's interesting in this one, because if you look at the one I was really wrong about was the Barboza one, because the game plan for Barboza had been so obviously laid out, and it still works. But Dan Hooker was just not that kind of fighter. He would have had to make a big adaptation, and a lot of guys can't fight in multiple ways. It's very, one of the reasons that Sugar Ray Leonard was so revered was because he could be both the boxer and the puncher. He could go forwards and backwards. To be able to do everything to a high level boxing level is very, very tricky. And that's why, a lot of the very, very best fighters are the ones who can fight going forwards, fight going back, cut the ring, be evasive, do all of those things with all their own quirks on it. No one's asking you to be able to do everything. No one's asking you to like develop a Joe Frazier left hook when you're a side-on jabber. But to be able to take part in multiple scenarios and force yourself onto the fight or take away the fight from the opponent. And Dan Hooker, his style generally has not been like getting in people's face. And he didn't do that against Barbosa, and he got beaten up on the outside. But where he has excelled is getting right on the end of people's reach. Well, on the end of his own reach, because he's a big, long guy. How fucking crazy is it that he used to fight a featherweight? And it's so strange. He got beaten up by Yair Rodriguez. And then he beat up Gilbert Burns, who's now up at welterweight. It's very weird to think about. But yeah, Dan Hooker, he's not just the low kick. He's not Jeremy Stevens, fucking always slapping Jeremy Stevens. But there are guys now who just learned the low kick and they're like, that's my move, go to that. But Hooker does a very good job of using his jab in combination. Not like combination like bam bam. Well, he does sometimes, but as in like sometimes he'll jab, sometimes he'll low kick, and he gets people reacting. And when you're not reacting and you're trying to box, he's kicking you in the leg. When you're picking up your leg and trying to check, he's jabbing you in the face. And it really makes for a hard time against someone that long. He also does a very good job of setting up distance and picking the moments when he wants you to come to him. If you watch his fight with Gilbert Burns, dropped him with a short right hand going backwards. Actually, that's something that makes me think of Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier does this thing where he steps back and throws the straight up the center as he does so. And you don't see it a lot. It looks kind of clumsy when it happens. But he'll have someone like Eddie Alvarez moving in on him and suddenly going, oh, fuck, and pulling their head back because he's just shooting this straight while he's moving backwards. I mean, Pacquiao used to do that a lot, like step his back foot back or out to his left and throw the left hand at the same time. But yeah, Dan Hooker likes to set up that distance and get people lunging for him. And that's really how he uses his reach well. He'll make guys overcommit to closing the distance and run them onto things. He did an amazing job against Mark Jacasey. I think that's one of his best fights. And that's when I really started raving about him because, that and Ross the Boss, because he fought a very tricky counterfighter in Mark Jacasey, a very flashy guy who'd looked amazing up to that point. And he just said, nah, I'm not gonna come in and give you that. I'm just gonna pick at you from out here. And lo and behold, that low kick and the jab and just feinting and annoying him from distance had Mark Jacasey running in. And in both the first and third round, and I think the finish came this way, Mark Jacasey ended up getting dinged and ducking him on the hips and getting guillotined because he was running in from such a long distance. And Dan Hooker almost guillotined Gilbert Burns. I think that was after he dropped him. And then the other one that he does is like catching dudes with knees as they come in, because the shorter guy, even if you're not trying to be Joe Frazier or whatever, you're not Ross Pearson trying to duck immediately after you've thrown punches. As the shorter guy, it is natural to try and duck down or crouch down, as you back up out of the exchange. Was it Jim Miller he caught with another knee? He caught Ross Pearson with one. But yeah, just picking those up in mid-exchange works really well too. And I think that's what's interesting because while Dustin can be more aggressive and more of a banger, they're sort of similar principles because Dustin has done really well in recent years, parking up on the end of his reach and using his jab to annoy people. Watch how many jabs he got, and it's got so much better from fight to fight to fight. It's crazy how much he's improved as a boxer in like 5 fights. He's had a 30-fight career, and the first 25 are arse. And then suddenly he's boxing better and better every fight. But if you watch his jab against Holloway, it's so sharp. You won't see anyone jabbing up Holloway like that. I mean, Alex Volkanovski did a great job of out kickboxing Holloway, but to like hand fight Holloway and catch him with jab after jab is largely unheard of. I would say almost completely unheard of. But if you watch that fight or the Alvarez ones or the Miller one, it's park up on the end of the range, flick that backhanded jab out, be ready to lean back or step back and crack him with the left hand or a big right hook. And just 1 or 2 punches. He's never like a big combination puncher or counter combination guy. But again, it's like set up the distance, needle them at the end of it. He uses body kicks really well, actually, from his like jabbing distance. He'll just throw him naked, but it works really well for him. And then as the opponent comes back in, you counter punch. And then, he will still do the running, shifting punches from time to time. And that's That's a big dangerous one against Hooker, because I could see him clattering Hooker with that, because, Max Holloway, I would go, well, you're not going to be able to do running punches against Max Holloway, but he did, because he set himself up, he's showing this beautiful scientific boxing, and then he's going, well, now I'm going to do something apeshit, and then I'm back to scientific boxing again. And it is scientific boxing done ugly, but, there's boxing. You could have a boxing coach come in and go, oh, that's all wrong. Get your lead leg there, keep your shoulders here, blah, 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 blah. But Dustin's boxing hits the key points. I think, it's working out what really matters, like getting down behind your shoulders and elbows and forearms. If you watch his shoulder roll stuff, Stonewall stuff, not only is he down behind his lead shoulder, which is the basics of the shoulder roll, but when his rear hand, he's got his wrist up by his temple. Like he's not just glove there, because the glove is obviously the end of a lever and just gets smacked around. He's like braced, hand on top of head, forearm braced against the strikes. He really does just encase his face with bone. However, Dan Hooker not going to be throwing huge bombs at him, just going to be poking him with jabs, which could be annoying if he can get to Poirier's eyes. I mean, it really depends how accurate his jab is against Poirier's wonderful defensive shell. And I know, whenever you say this, I always want to qualify it with, I'm not saying he's Floyd Mayweather. I'm not saying he's James Toney or someone like that who can just stand in front of you and make you miss over and over and over again. But he's very, very difficult to hit well, Dustin Poirier, unless he's doing something stupid and gets caught, like running with punches. But just that shell makes it so difficult to land good blows, because you're getting forehead, shoulder, nothing good. You got one eye and a bit of temple on one side. Maybe neck if you can go behind the offside arm. But I wouldn't be surprised, if the grappling comes into play in this a little bit, because Dustin really does use those short level changes along the fence very well. He'll get you where he wants to, hit your hips, and then just pull you back, pull your feet out and put you on your butt. He's never big takedown, Habib style, flatten him out. He gets you to the seated Habib position anyway. Just those short little double legs. Also, against Duffy and then Holloway in his not last one. I keep forgetting the Habib fight happened. But very good at grabbing a collar tie and hitting people from there too. And of course, when he's on the ground, Dustin Poirier is a Das man. I'm not going to sing it to the Billy Gunn theme, but I wanted to. I think that's a really compelling matchup. I think I can't decide if that's a really good matchup for Hooker or not. Well, I suppose it depends if he wins or loses. But I'm just thinking, in terms of top lightweights, if you really want to get Hooker over, this is probably one of your better bets. He's not going to fight Gaethje because Gaethje's lined up for the Habib fight. Conor McGregor is not around. Tony's just fought. I mean, Tony, I think, would be a really tough matchup for Hooker, just based on the incredible pressure and ability to walk himself in over and over again, and fighting behind long front kicks and things like that. Just stuff to make it. I think Hooker benefits a lot if you see his kick and move style and you get discouraged and sit back, and then he's just going to take over the fight. I think you have to take the nasty low kicks and the jabs and move forward and say, no, I've got to get off 2 or 3 punches after every time he hits me on the nose. A lot of that Paul Felder fight, Paul Felder got back into it by toughing it out, and pushing forward in on Hooker. And of course by doing that Valentina take the low kick on the lead leg, spin into the back kick technique. God damn, that was a good fight. I'm going to have to watch that again now. So what else we got on this card? It's kind of a weird one, to be honest. Gian Villante versus Maurice Green. I think I might watch that just to make myself angry, like how I read the news. What has Gian Villante got on people in the UFC? He's never had an interesting fight except when he's been knocked out quickly, like his last one. But he's going up to heavyweight, so maybe that'll make him less boring? ? You got Mike Perry versus Mickey Gall as the co-main event, which tells you a fair bit. Those are not co-main event quality fighters in my mind. Mickey Gall, I mean, if you lose to Mickey Gall, I think you are certified as a bum in the UFC. Good grappler, fun grappler, but equally got beaten up by Diego Sanchez, If you watch his fight with Randy Brown, he's just absolutely hopeless if things aren't going completely his way. But Mike Perry is doing something very interesting for this fight in that he's having himself cornered by his new girlfriend. His last girlfriend was his corner. Sorry, his former wife was his corner. And to be fair, she seemed to do a pretty good job of it because, like, she was in the corner calling for elbows in the Ellenberger fight. Yeah, Mike Perry is... We're all talking about him because he's a meme, but I think there is something, a genuine screw loose. And whether he continues to be a great laugh or commits a school shooting, I think that's the knife edge we're balanced on at the moment. However, I do know that Mike Perry can stop a decent takedown just with, a dig and underhook, use the over-under clinch, pull him up off your legs, If you watched him against Cerrone was in the welterweight. Cerrone in the welterweight division, his thing was, I'm going to duck in and run towards your hips for the takedown. That Henan Barao really bad, not set up shot style. So he shucked off Cerrone easy there, and then he decided to trip him and ended up on top of him and got swept and beaten up from there. But I think if he can stop Donald Cerrone taking him down, and he did, he can probably stop Mickey Gall. And, Mickey Gall is such a non-threat in the striking generally that I imagine Mike Perry could just fight with his hands down and, never give up his hips. Then you got some weird ones like Brendan Allen versus Kyle Daukaus. Don't really know anything about them. Luis Peña's back. Violent Bob Ross. He's fighting Karma Worthy, who was in that really weird fight. It was two really gangly dudes striking really strangely. But it was decent. That was his last one. And I think he scored the knockout in that one. So... yeah, I mean, they're similarly rated by most rankings websites. Obviously, Violent Bob Ross, they are putting a lot into hyping him. They got the ghost of Matt Wyman back just to get crushed by him. But I actually quite like this as a test. I think the grappling might make the difference here. Well, I don't know. I mean, Worthy, I couldn't decide if I was impressed or depressed by his striking last time. It was weird, like almost rooster-like in its striking. But then, Roy Jones got a lot of inspiration from his fighting cocks. So I won't laugh too hard at that. Fucking hell, Felipe Lins. Yeah, I mean, the rest of that card's not... Jinyu Frey's turning up, which is, she's not an interesting fighter. She's only as good as Invicta is, but she was the Invicta atomweight champion for a little while. Got smoked by Hamdelay a little while ago. But, if people are thirsty about Michelle Waterson, my word, it's going to be Sahara levels of thirst when you see Jinyu Frey, especially if you see those cosplay pictures she used to do for the Invicta weigh-ins. She's a tiny woman with massive biceps. Oh, now there's a fly in the room with me. This isn't going well. Right, we'll have a quick look at this card from last week. I know it's a little bit late in the week to be talking about it, but, I wrote about it, so if you are a Patreon boy, head on over there, read the article. But that fight, I said it was going to be banging, and then it was banging, which was incredibly rewarding, to be honest. Emmitt versus Burgos, terrific, It was quite interesting because Burgos, has been working to get to the inside, or in his best fights he did, but he's got the awkward situation of being really good on the inside and hitting the body, but being incredibly tall at featherweight. Honestly, it's bananas how he makes featherweight, and he's got the added annoyance of being in really good shape. He normally, if you're fucking gigantic for the weight class, you lose something in the third round, or late second round, third round. But his whole thing is being in great condition and hitting the body and stuff. He has in recent years been using his height a bit more. Like in the Cub Swanson fight is a notable example. Because he's finding these shorter guys and he's finding it harder to get to the body on them. And you really noticed that in this fight. There was a nice one where he threw a right uppercut, stepped up into a left knee and things like that. But he was using his jab and his low kick his low kicks as counter low kicks, which was really nice. Every time Emmitt threw the right hand, he'd catch it and throw the inside low kick and knock Emmitt's lead leg out, or slip inside the jab and throw the outside low kick and buckle his knee in. Which was doubly hard for Emmitt because he clearly hurt his knee very early in the fight. I was pointing out last week in my article that Shane Burgos adapts quite well in his fights. He finds what he needs to do to get to better impose his game. So if he came out with the plan to low kick lots, good on him. But if he realized that Emmitt's leg wasn't great and he went to counter low kicking as a response, that's even more impressive, to be honest. That's we were talking about guys who can do it all, and that is a really good sign. If you are a guy who normally gets inside and punches and then goes, but his leg's jacked up, I'm going to sit back use my nice inside slip that I usually use to cross counter and then come back with the left hook. And instead I'm going to hang outside, slip inside the jab and throw the right low kick. That's real clever. But I thought Emmitt looked really good. Basically, the matchups that happened were Emmitt would burst in with like his jab overhand, which is what he does from both stances all the time. And that's why some of his fights are super weird. He just long periods of nothing and then that. But Burgos did a great job of driving up the pace and making him work. So it was like 1-2 or jab overhand from Emmitt met with counter low kick from Burgos, and then jab from Burgos often met with pull counter from Emmitt. And you had this back and forwards as they were trying to get a read on each other, trying, failing, succeeding. And that's what makes a really good fight, back and forth stuff. And then in the third round, I mean, this is what a close fight it was. Small adjustments scored Josh Emmitt 2 knockdowns that otherwise wouldn't have happened. And that was, he went southpaw. He stepped off to his left and he did a little drop shift the first time, TJ Dillashaw stuff. He got that and the big nipples from TJ Dillashaw. The other one was more like a pep step. He bounced off to his left with his feet level, changed direction, came back off his left foot, hit him with a southpaw left overhand, I think it was. But yeah, I mean, I'd just done the Filthy Casuals quickie on Willie Pep and the pep step. It is a cool move. Go check it out. But Emmitt did it in this fight and scored a knockdown off it, which was awesome. Honestly, that fight was robbed by not having a crowd, if we're honest. I mean, fairly solid contender for Fight of the Year. One of the most technical Fight of the Years you could pick. And it was even sadder because Burgos he does this like pump up the crowd, like the wings thing where you go like, come on guys, raise the roof. He does that quite often in his fights. He did it at the start of the third round and I was like, oh, there's no one there. Why does this happen to me? But what else was good? What's really good? I mean, really, it's only really worth talking about the important stuff because we're so far removed now. But that Max Roskopf fight, Roskopf looked interesting. He was picking up singles. He was going right hand lead, cross grip on the lead leg, so like for a high crotch entry, but then pull round onto the single leg, pick it up, get to the high single, and really giving Hubbard some trouble there. He was using the single to sit back on a leg reap and enter leg entries, and he was doing it like Thiago Moises the other day. Enter the leg reap, but don't go for the heel hook. Enter the leg reap with the Achilles lock. Which you can really fuck someone's leg up just by cranking an Achilles lock round on a reaped leg. But I thought Hubbard looked really good. When he was in bottom side, he had his near arm over the top of Roskopf's cross-facing arm. So it was like he was giving Roskopf the body lock rather than the crossface. Crossface is death against really good guys. And if you punch your arm through and over the top of that arm, you can do that sort of Hani Yaya's awesome at it. He'll do like the empty half, which is just draping your leg over the opponent's leg so that they turn away from you, and then you time it and turn to your knees, to a turtle. And Hubbard did that. I think the thing that a lot of people will miss about this fight is that Austin Hubbard is not just some schlub. Max Roskopf was a very well-regarded grappling prospect, MMA prospect, grappling phenom, D1 wrestler, very good submission grappler, obviously protege of Robert Drysdale. But Austin Hubbard has been quietly building this resume as the anti-grappler guy. Because, he came into the UFC, first fight, Davy Ramos. Then he fights Kyle Prepolek, and then he fights Marco Madsen. So you got Davy Ramos, ADCC champion, Marco Madsen, Olympic medalist. He's faced scarier grapplers and better wrestlers than Max Roskopf, and he gave them a hard time. That Marco Madsen fight, and this is something I pointed out in my article too, really good with the switch knee. He uses it and it doesn't hit anything and you're like, why is he doing that? And he's doing it because if the head comes down, he's going to hit you in the face. I think he hit Madsen with it and stunned him. But he'll throw like the lead leg low kick and then bring it back, hoping the opponent's dropping on his hips and then come up with the knee. Or he'll throw the jab and then a switch knee. He's using that knee really cleverly. And if they don't, they'll stand up and he follows the switch knee with a 1-2. I like Austin Hubbard a lot. I think he's... the other one that he was doing was body jabs. Because that's going to that keeps his hips away from yours and his shoulders away from your hips. It's a check on the distance. But it's also annoying. If you punch someone in the solar plexus, they're going to get annoyed, especially if they're not like a very experienced striker, if they're a grappler. Jab them in the solar plexus, you're tiring them out, you're annoying them, and you can come over the top with the overhand afterwards. You check the distance, you know they're not shooting, so then you come with the overhand. Really nice stuff. Austin Hubbard, keep an eye on him. He could like lose his next 3 fights, but he's doing very interesting things when he's at a very obvious disadvantage in the grappling or the wrestling. Bobby Green versus Clay Guida. My reaction to that was, what year is this? Dominic Cruz's reaction to that was, this could be a main event. Justin James surprised Frank Camacho. That was a weird one. But that was from, I think he was jabbing, like he was dipping his shoulder and jabbing each time. And then he dipped his shoulder and came around the side with the left hook. And he did it a couple of times. And then he stunned him and knocked him out. I mean, I love Frank Camacho, but he caught him dead to rights there, And I think he was a last-minute replacement, wasn't he? Because it was a catch weight. That's the flip side of these last-minute replacements. You're getting some guys just coming in and getting absolutely murdered. Like that guy with 4 fights who fought Tyson Nam, who's got 30 fights, and he was like a chubby bantamweight, and Tyson Nam's absolutely jacked. But you're getting the other end of it, which is like some guys come in and are just trickier than you expect, and especially in the first minute or two of the fight, that's very dangerous. Jim Miller submitting Roosevelt Roberts was baller. Every time Jim Miller fights now, I'm like, I should get Lyme disease because he's just become the crafty old man, and he's doing great things with it. And then Curtis Blades versus Alexander Volkanov. Not a very eventful fight, but just Curtis Blades being Curtis Blades. He really just mauled Volkov on the ground. I mean, I said this was an interesting matchup, but Volkov, his wrestling has always been sort of a liability. Even against people like Verdum. And back in Bellator, guys were wrestling him, but I was hoping that he'd improved a bit, but Curtis Blades was just all over him. I don't know what it's called in wrestling when you get the 2-on-1 from like the turtle or back control, or not back control, turtle or all fours, and you pull the cross hand into the far pocket, But he was doing that like on a giant Russian in MMA and beating him up from there. Also, in the second round, there was a really nice... he sidestepped a kick from orthodox stance, sidestepped a front kick or a knee. Fucking Volkov throwing those naked knees again. I'm intercepting him with my chin. But sidestepped a knee into southpaw and came back with a southpaw left straight. It was absolutely lovely. I think Curtis Blades, and I've said this before, I think he's a guy who... how good his striking looks is directly correlated to how confident he is. Kind of like Overeem, I have faith that he could do the fundamentals very well and very slickly against people he's already beating. I don't have tremendous faith if he starts losing or he can't get his takedowns going. I don't have tremendous faith that he'll pull it back with his striking. But yeah, I thought those were actually some pretty good fights. I hope. Is this the first one in Fight Island this weekend? Fight Island, which we're pushing ahead with because we have to save face, because we have to say we did it. Oh no, this is the Apex still. Usman versus Burns is the first one on Fight Island, and that's actually looking like a pretty good card. But yeah, we'll be back Monday probably to chat fights again. And if you haven't watched the Filthy Casuals Guide to Dustin Poirier 3.0, watch it, and most importantly, share it, because the algorithm just randomly decides which ones are going to get 100,000 views, like Tony Ferguson, and which ones are going to get like 20,000 views. So anything you can do to help me on that, much appreciated. If you want to get in on the Patreon, read the Shane Burgos hype piece and then the Shane Burgos lost but what a great fight piece, and support the podcast, get in on the Patreon. And to get access to the Slackies film rooms, we'll do another one of those soon too. If you want to send an email to the podcast, fightsgonbypodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to read what I'm doing at any time, fightprimer.com. I'm your boy Jack Slack. And God, I hope this recorded. Cheers.